Let's Talk Prevention Idaho. This podcast is a production led by the statewide nonprofit Community Coalitions of Idaho, or CCI. Here at CCI, it is our job to support the work of prevention across the state of Idaho through education, training, and providing valuable resources. We help make the work of prevention happen all across Idaho. This podcast will update listeners on what CCI is doing from week to week, as well as provide information for vital professionals in Idaho across the country. How's it going, everybody? Welcome into yet another episode of Let's Talk Prevention Idaho, where we talk about all the things that CCI is doing, the prevention strategies that are happening in Idaho, and things that we've learned at conferences and just with other colleagues across the nation that we think might be of benefit to our coalitions. Remember, we don't do the direct programming. We're here just to support you being able to successfully bring the programming to your communities the best way possible. And we're continuing in our series of I really want to pre-introduce some of the speakers that we're going to have at our upcoming fall prevention conference. This will be our third annual fall conference. Last year was virtual because COVID kind of took peaked for everyone here in Idaho, hospitalized this guy. So we really wanted to make sure that now that we can safely come back together in person, that we really load the cannon to bring you as much amazing content as we possibly can to make you the best prevention professionals out there. And this today's interview is really special to me because I met him just a few months ago. He keynoted for the State Department of Education's prevention conference, and he was a last-minute add-in. And the person who he was stepping in for, I was super excited to see her speak. And he came in, I was like, I don't know this guy, and I didn't really, he was so last minute that I didn't get a chance to look into it. And pretty sure he put together this presentation pretty quickly, but about 15-20 minutes into this keynote, I was hooked and used some of these strategies that he talked about in his keynote in my own personal life, and even started talking to colleagues about it on how we engage with people, how do we, what kind of words do we use, things like that. So it was kind of neat. And then when I got a chance to tell my program coordinator who we would be talking to as we were bringing him into this whole conversation of coming to the conference, she got excited for an entirely different reason, because he's also pretty big on TikTok. So how you doing, Brian?
Yeah, good. That's what always makes me laugh, and I've been to feel bad because I haven't been producing a whole lot of video content in the last couple of weeks because we've been at, I think, 4 different schools in the last week. So I'll get back to it. I need a secondary person to help me with that. But
Right.
so always just funny to hear about that. So that's
when you
pretty
speak
cool.
Professionally, and then you end up becoming a big thing on a social platform, that's a beast all in itself. Like each one of those are full-time jobs that can be. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
So I met you, got a chance to hear you speak at the State Department of Education conference. How quickly did you find out that you would be speaking at this conference and you had to put your presentation together?
Yeah, they called me on Friday, and the conference was the following Tuesday. And he said, "Would you?" I was like, "Well, where is this at?" And luckily, it was in Boise. So, needless to say, my weekend was absorbed with preparing for this. And then part of that is because this methodology we initially built for adults, and yet we're finding more and more impact and delivery happening with kids. Like I said, I've been in schools, a few different schools all week, and I'll leave town for 5 days and come back and talk to a couple more schools when we get back. And so it's pretty exciting that way. But sort of last minute in the preparation, but really, the concepts are brain-based, and there's just slight variances. Well, there's fairly large variances between a child's brain and an adult's brain, but in terms of connection, the need for connection, how that works in a conversation. There's a lot of big overlapping similarities that are important. Yeah.
Yeah, especially I remember back to my child development classes and learning about the different stages of development and that adolescent period, that junior high period where you're starting to get, going through puberty and you're getting more responsibilities, but you're still treated like a child. There's a lot of
Mhm.
like, there's a lot of turbulence going on in a child's mind and body. I can't imagine ever wanting to be in middle school ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, fair. I think I would feel the same for sure. Yeah.
So the program has kind of really taken on a life of its own in this whole realm of um, the adolescent, the child side of your program since you spoke at the State Department of Education's conference, right?
Yeah, the tools and just so people know, we designed essentially a conversation style that's based off of four levels of connection, and you can think of those sort of like Maslow's hierarchy, but in terms of what we need to feel heard, we need to feel understood, we need to feel valued, and we need to feel like we have impact, right? And so those are sort of the levels through which we create conversations that we can help people have that feeling, and by having more positively oriented questions that help people kind of look into their day, their week, or their year, with a more effective or empowering lens. Yeah, and so creating those for schools now, or rather how teachers can facilitate the conversations between the kids and with each other. It's just one of those places, again, we didn't initially design this process for, but it's been really exciting to see it be rolled out in some of these schools, see some of the kids engage with it, and see the teachers and the school staff engage with it, and just feel as though this problem, this kind of monstrous problem of disconnection that we all feel, that they feel like they can do something about it.
And it's kind of, I mean, the timing could be in anything short of perfect because I know a lot of
Right.
my wife's an educator. I'm a former educator, and a lot of educators seem to, in school staff period, kind of seem to feel like they're on the ropes right now with COVID because it changed a lot of things. Went through a lot of changes very quickly, especially here in
Mhm.
Idaho. They went from hardly any technology to one-to-one devices overnight,
Yeah.
and having new. It's got to be refreshing to have new tools to work with kids, especially kids have been so heavily impacted with being
Mhm.
kind of siloed, away from their friends, away from their teachers to a certain extent. They don't have that personal, physical
Mhm.
relationship for basically
Well,
like 2 years.
yeah, well, and what I think part of that transition, and what we learned from sort of the loneliness data is that we've gotten connection through proximity and quantity, historically, meaning I'm around a lot of people and they're close to me, right? And so, but proximity and quantity have nothing to do, or have very little to do, with actual loneliness. Loneliness, or rather connection, has much more to do with quality, than anything else. Quality, and to some degree expectation, right? And so with that, like, we can create that connected feeling much more efficiently and consistently than we've been taught. And so when we're used to just having it happen by accident, then being kind of isolated in these words, like, really messes with people, simply because they expect to have it. They don't have then they expect to have it from proximity, and that expectation creates loneliness in itself. But also, it's much harder on a Zoom call to then create that connecting event, if you will, that moment of connection that you would have, say, at a water cooler or walking around at work, because you have just more time for that to process. Whereas you're not going to sit on a Zoom call and stare at each other until the next thing comes up. You
Right.
can stand next to somebody and say very relatively little, and then all of a sudden, you get into this into a conversation that actually connects. And so I think it was that removal that I think highlighted this idea that, like, we need to make connection a goal in conversation. And what we've discovered is that when you do that and you use the science behind it, of like conversations, what we call transactional conversations versus transformational conversations, once we start understanding that difference, then we find that it's not really about distance. It's about connection.
So you're going to be doing two things for us in October at our conference. You're going to be providing a keynote. What is that gonna look like? The information and
Yeah, the keynote, the keynote is interactive, which is my favorite part of all of this. What we've learned over the last 2 years is that, like, the more people experience this, the more they realize that they can actually do it. Now, it's hard to like, it takes a while and a lot of practice to get, if you will, good at it. But we generally cover sort of those four levels of connection. But we really address it from the standpoint of, like, here's the thing we're missing, and we're missing connection in these levels, and here's how we can create that together. And that together piece is pretty important, because connection is something that you have to create with other people. Like, and loneliness is not a problem you figure out on your own, right? You certainly are required on your own to do something about it, but it by rule requires other people. And so we really outline kind of some of those challenges, but also show at a high level some of the tools and the differences between when we have a transactional conversation, like, how was your day, and how we can switch that with just like simple changes, like, what was the best part of your day, and how that actually affects the brain differently, how it can engage somebody in the conversation, and then what to do from there to achieve different levels of connectedness and have conversations that actually leave people feeling more confident, feeling more clear about their strengths, building things like emotional intelligence and growth mindset without ever even teaching people what those things are. So we get to kind of cover those at a high level and give people a couple conversations to try out in the keynote.
that's cool. I know one of the things that I remember from your keynote at the State Department of Education conference was question was, what is one thing you did to make someone else's day better? And that stood out to me because I have two daughters who are almost 4 years apart, but they both really, they do, there's a lot of things that they do throughout the day that are there to make their teachers or their fellow students' days better. And I normally don't find out about it until a parent teacher conference. And I would love to know about it daily, that,
Right.
my daughter, helped the kid in her class that is on an IEP and that isn't as organized, and help them stay organized, or help the kid on the playground who fell down, or my oldest on how she's, just there to make sure that her teacher's days aren't any more difficult by adding, stress to them. So I was like, that's a really good question to ask. I should probably find out about more of these things that my kids are doing in real time, rather than waiting until months later when the teacher, oh yeah, and they did this. I was like, oh.
Yeah. And that's what we're finding, like, teachers being able to have those conversations with students having it with each other, and then parents having it having those conversations with their kids. And this is the thing that so much of this process is we've built has been just kind of a surprise here and a surprise there. But I think one of the things we're really just starting to learn about that was happening without us knowing it happening was how much these conversations are actually increasing the chances that someone when they're going through something tough, a mental health challenge or that sort of thing, that it increases their ability to talk about it. because when they're approached with, what's the best part of your day, what's good, tell me something good happened in the last month, tell me, when were when did you feel the most happy this week, things like that. Those are the what we call level 1 and 2 conversations, not even getting into level 3 and 4. But we have those conversations, or rather when folks have those conversations, you've built the trust and what we call the social capital necessary for someone to feel safer in telling you something they might be challenged with or a problem they're dealing with.
Yeah,
And so much of our focus in helping is about asking about the problem. And while we don't want people to stop doing that, to make it easier and safer for people to answer, we have to create experiences of psychological safety in our conversations.
Well, plus we all don't live the same reality. So what one kid might see as a problem, another kid might not, because it's their household is kind of
Yeah.
turbulent anyway. So this is just
Mhm.
normal. This
Yeah.
happens all the time. So
And again, that's another reason why, what we call these positively oriented, but they're very affirming kind of conversations, are again designed to create that feeling of safety. And for some kids, that's a new, for some adults, that's a new feeling. And the more I feel it, the more I have that space to, safely talk about my values, my interests, my strengths, and feel that conversation in a non-judgmental way, when somebody's not giving me suggestions, opinion, feedback, or advice. We call that SOFA. The more that happens, the more I realize it can happen. And then we have something much more effective to work from, for kids, as opposed to, telling them they're going to want something that they've never experienced before.
yeah. So that's the keynote, but then you're not just going to leave us with a bunch of questions, right? You're going to actually help us like figure out how to apply some of this stuff in a breakout session.
Yeah, so the breakout session will just do 1 hour of, I'll probably show it a couple of times, and then, have people, try it out with each other, and do some debriefs, and in the course of an hour, we'll probably be able to try 3 or 4, different questions, likely with 3 or 4 different people, and get some, if you will, time under the belt. And that's what we see in the program. We've actually changed all of our programming in the last month or two, where we used to, do an education drip and then weekly practice. It's now we have 1 or 2 day intensives on the front end, and then allow people to do weekly practice and weekly education over 3 months. So you learn how to do it first, and then the education and support happens after that, versus, most programs that I used to run, workshops that I've run for 10 years, are all education and content up front, and then you're sort of out on your own to do it. Well, we're kind of shifting that to, but put the do it on front, and education and the support on the back end. And so that we're trying to incorporating that in the breakouts, as we're doing in our programs. It's kind of, for me, it's fun because that's the place I have the most fun. Like we've got a public group starting on the 24th and 25th of September, and I don't know that I'll sleep at all on the 23rd. Just looking forward to how many conversations, and giving people the opportunity not just to try it on with each other, but we got a few kind of tricks under the sleeve for other places they get to practice, and leave after a couple of days feeling really confident about their ability to ask questions that, quite frankly, just help people feel better, and calm that fight or flight region that is so associated with disconnection and rejection, and yeah, just see how in a quick conversation we can actually do a lot of good without having to solve anybody's problems.
Yeah, one of the reasons why really focusing on connection and conversation and being able to successfully talk to uh, talk with our kids is because Idaho is basically working to revamp juvenile justice in
Mm,
the state. Large grant was put out this legislative session that is opening up these resource centers all across the state, and it's a the goal they're trying to do is mirror after what they're doing in Clark County. He actually, the director there, no longer does incarceration. It's all outpatient, and he surrounds the parents and the youth who are finding themselves um, pushed towards juvenile justice with services. And I was like,
Hmm.
that's amazing. That's amazing
Wow.
what he's doing. And so the fact that we're trying to replicate any part of that here um, in Idaho, I was like, oh, how do I support that?
Yeah.
Because a lot of our coalitions are getting involved in these resource centers. I mean, in Region 7, one of our coalitions is taking over the entire task because
Hmm.
they've taken on a lot more than just primary prevention. And you've got some experience with juvenile justice, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. I was a teacher in Juvenile Corrections Center Napa and the Chemical Addictions Unit for 3 or 4 years. That's kind of where I got into the brain science part. That's where I got my start while I was doing that. So I hadn't heard about this. I haven't heard about that. So that's a really interesting and great. Like we could definitely use more sort of resources to
Yeah, it was
to help that.
it was odd to be invited to this speaking opportunity. This guy from Clark County, who I found out worked with my dad in corrections in
Hmm.
California. It's a small
Wow.
world,
Right.
and he's sitting here talking about this program, and I'm waiting for the incarceration piece, and he's like, "It's gone." I'm looking in the room, and I am the only prevention person sitting in a room full of
Hmm.
corrections officers and cops and probation, and I'm all, do I belong here?
Right.
And I was glad that I was able to sit there because so many of our prevention folks have decided to apply for these grants and be a part of this program. So I'm like, okay, so if we're doing this, we got to learn how to do this right. We got to learn how to
Hmm.
talk to people because we're getting, a lot of times kids, people who find themselves incarcerated aren't from the same situation that we are. I mean, not from my
Right.
situation. I've
Right.
never been incarcerated before in my life. I don't even know what that would look like. So
Hmm.
I would need, I was like, I would need tools to be able to talk to and help people in these situations. So I
Hmm.
think it's really neat that we're going to have an opportunity to have you give us some tips and tools and actual applications so that we can
Hmm.
see what it feels like to actually try to have these types of conversations.
Yeah, and I'm very much looking forward to it too, simply because my career has been teaching tools like this. Of course, not this one because we invented it over the last few years, but teaching neuroscience-based tools to, in mining, in mining sites in remote parts of the world, oil and gas places, tech companies, places that they're not really interested in the theory. They're interested in what they need to do that's going to help them get to where they need to go. And I think when thinking about the folks that'll be at this conference, the people, that are in doing the work and being able to help them leave feeling like they have some new tools to use. Like I feel like that's where I'm most engaged. So I'm hoping that creates the same engagement on the other side.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. And I'm glad that we had so many carryover funds from COVID, so we were able to make all of this happen. So really excited to have you out in October, Brian, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to sit down and give our listeners a chance to get a little bit of a sneak peek on what they're going to be experiencing at the conference. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode?
No, other than I'm looking forward to it, and being up in Moscow at my alma mater should be a lot of fun as well.
Are
So,
you going? Are you going? Are you heading up early because it's homecoming weekend?
oh,
The homecoming game is literally the Saturday before a
oh,
conference.
I did not know that at all. So, yeah, obviously it wasn't on my plan, but yeah, I probably head up the night before and see some old friends, and yeah, go from there.
Sounds good. Well, guys, if you want to learn more about what Brian's talking about, and if you want to learn more about having these types of conversations, what you got to do is you got to dig down in the description there, grab that registration link, and you got to get registered. You got to register for um, this conference and head on up. And it's it's going to be well worth your time. If you are a member, we do have scholarships for your hotel stay and mileage. If you're not a member, you're still more than welcome to come. Just let us know. We'll make room for you, because our goal here is to make sure that everybody has a chance and an opportunity to grow in the work of prevention and our related fields here in Idaho. So it is our mission to make everyone stronger. It's the task that we've been given, and we wholeheartedly want to make sure that we're doing it to our best every single day. So that is all we have for today's episode. I want to appreciate everybody for stopping by, giving us a listen. Like I said, we'll have information on how you can learn more about Brian in the comments below, as well as that registration link for the fall prevention conference. And also, if you're interested in getting more involved with CCI, or you want to become a member, you can also head over to communitycoalitionsofidaho.org and learn about the rest of the trainings that we have coming up, our monthly member meetings, and so much more. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and be good out there.